everyone. My name is Chris Kimball, and part of Legacy Tours and Travel. I'm a part owner with Jill and Mark Clifford, who happen to be taking people to Asia right now. So they're touring the southeast part of Asia and having a wonderful time. But I've been partners with them for since 2013, and this particular genre of the traditions of Christ. Uh, we started in 2016 to England, and that was with a former mentor of mine, Dr. John Hall, was our first guide that took us on this particular tradition. But it's a fascinating journey on learning and trying to find out about Jesus and those years where he is not talked about in scripture, those years between the ages of 12 and 30. Sometimes they're referred to as the silent years because the Bible doesn't have anything to give you content for that. But there are plenty of content about Jesus from other sources. And I'm excited tonight because we have revamped. We've heard from some of our previous travelers that have loved this particular tour. They love following the footsteps of Jesus and learning about him, but wanted to see some different sites. And so we went ahead and redesigned the tour. We've still got some of the good iconic sites that you have to include when you're talking about Jesus in Great Britain, but we've also included a lot of new sites. And along with that, serendipitously, I was able to get connected with Bron Kimball through Doran, and he had referred me to Bron when we first got back from a tour that he had been with me to England, and told me about this amazing book, The Hidden Footsteps of Jesus. And I immediately ordered it right away and devoured it, and was so impressed with the sourcing and how they've pulled in so much of that tradition into one book. Because usually when people want to learn about this tradition, I'm sourcing out numerous books to get the full, to get a bigger context or picture, and they've done an excellent job. And so I want to introduce Bron Kimball and his brother Benjamin Kimball. We got a lot of Kimballs going on here, right? So I want you to know
Your
that
cousin somewhere.
we
Yeah.
are cousins. Their uncle, Glenn Kimball, spent his life doing research on this particular tradition of Jesus and where he was in those silent years. And we were discussing this last night about the idea that he was doing this way before the internet that we have today that gives us so much information at the click of a button. I mean, he was really having to work hard to, do a lot of research on his own on site, and it would have been a much more difficult, and what he could accomplish today with the tools that we have. And so we really have to give our hat off to Glenn Kimball, who is their uncle. And Bron and their mother has taken that information that he's left and compiled it into the book that they have today. And so we're really excited that we connected at a Firm Foundation conference. And I thought it would be fascinating to have their insight on these stories with our Traditions Tour. So I was super happy that they were happy to work with us. And so they're going to be with us on this tour coming up. And so I'd like to just turn the time over to them.
Okay, so by way of introduction, Ben Kimball. I currently live in Visalia, California, which is right in the middle of the state near Sequoia National Park. I've been following my uncle Glenn Kimball stuff since I was a teenager, and was always just really impressed with it. One of my favorite Glenn Kimball stories was how he was able to, by way of a special contact, get inside the Vatican Library for 2 weeks, was allowed unlimited access, and went through as many manuscripts as he could with a notepad, and just spent all day and night copying things down because he knew he wouldn't get another chance to get in there. And he lived a very interesting life around the world, hunting these things down. Our book, we rely a lot on ancient manuscripts for what we're going to share today, as well as oral traditions and other evidences, which will be more apparent when you're actually out there on the trip. So we're very excited. I love Britain. It's a wonderful place. I especially love the countryside in the west where we're going. Britain is a very historic place. It's an especially historic place where we're going to be. A history like no other. And so I'm going to be very careful to call it Britain. I'm not going to use the term England and offend the Cornish people there. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Bron.
All right. Yeah. So as Chris pointed out, there are 18 years, you could even argue 19 years unaccounted for in Jesus's life, from age 12 when he's at the temple to age 30 when all of a sudden he's turning water into wine, right? And that's a long period to not hear from someone who claimed to be the Son of God, Savior of the world, able to work miracles. But when you read the stories of his childhood, they're incredible stories. There's some incredible stories out there. And then when he's teaching at the temple at age 12, I mean, it's not like people aren't noticing who this young man is and what he's capable of. So it does beg the question of, where is he during these 19 years? And I had a friend actually just today at work, brand new hire. I work at Angel Studios. He was brand new. And he came across my book because it was just on one of the tables and was asking me about it. And he said, so how do you know Jesus was in Britain? Like, what ancient text can you point me to? Point at where it says Jesus' feet were in Britain that's contemporary, right? From 100 AD. And I was like, I can't do that. That doesn't exist. But I can point to where his grandmother was in Britain. I can point to where his grandmother's little brother, his great uncle, that he was in Britain. And I can point to where his apostle Paul and his apostle Philip were in Britain. And I can point to where Cassius Longinus, the centurion who pierced his side, was in Britain. And the apostle Paul and some of his closest companions, Aristobulus, Rufus, Timotheus, these guys were all British. And the evidence has to be put together by looking at all the pieces. And this is the trick with history, is it's always a jigsaw puzzle. And it's like, those 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzles are a pain, but they're fun, right? We like doing those 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzles. But a 5,000-piece jigsaw puzzle, it's like too much, right? Like, I'm not going to do that. But history is, do you know how many pieces they had to put together to recreate the Dead Sea Scrolls? It was millions of tiny fragments. And that's kind of how history feels. But we can place Jesus's grandmother, Saint Anna, in southern Britain, in Cornwall. And it's one of the places we're going to go visit. And we can place his great uncle, his name was Joseph, her little brother, in Britain as well. What a lot of people don't know is that Jesus, when he was 14 or 15 years old, his father passed away. Joseph the carpenter died. You don't hear about him after being, seen at the temple at age 12. It's because he was no longer in the picture. He passed away. And in Jewish law and custom, but definitely Jewish law, the nearest of kin male adult takes over the rearing of any young men in the family until they're 19. And by the way, Jesus had brothers and sisters. It's right there in the New Testament. So the question becomes, who's the nearest of kin? Joseph the carpenter was older. His parents weren't around. He had no uncles. Mary was an only child. There's a lot of texts that back that up. So she had no brothers. There's no direct uncles. But there is this little brother of Saint Anna, little brother of Jesus's grandmother. His name was Joseph, and he lived in Cornwall, and he owned and operated the largest tin and lead mining operation in the ancient world. He was extremely wealthy, and that's exactly how the scriptures described him. They said he was a very wealthy disciple. And this is the man we know as Joseph of Arimathea in the New Testament. And Joseph of Arimathea was an immediate family member because in Roman law, switch over to Roman law now, only an immediate family member can request the body of the deceased and get it. And the Sanhedrin would have stopped him if they could. They wanted him buried in a common field with all the other criminals. That's documented in Sanhedric tradition, that's what they would do to convicted criminals. And they didn't stop him because they couldn't stop him because he was within Roman law as an immediate family member. So this is how we can place, putting the pieces together peripherally around, that Jesus very likely visited Britain starting at the age 15 after his father, Joseph the carpenter, passed away. He's now under the wing of this man who owns and operates the largest tin and lead mining operations in the world at the time, which was in Cornwall. And I'll let Ben take it over from here. I don't want to talk too much.
Sure, Bron, thanks. So in addition to these sources, there are also 4 different regions where oral traditions have been passed down about Jesus visiting this area of Britain in his youth with Joseph of Arimathea. That is significant because these are regions that are largely disconnected and came up with basically the same story independently, and it all corroborates each other. So on this trip, we're going to kind of follow, once we land and see some of the really ancient sites of Britain near London, we are going to make our way to the very tip of Cornwall. So that's the southwest corner, known as Land's End. And it's the most temperate place. It's the warmest, maybe the warmest place in Britain. So people go to the beach there all the time. We're going to go to that tip because that tip was generally the place of first landing. So if it's true what we're saying, and Jesus really did visit this place with Joseph of Arimathea, this was where they landed. They first saw shore. And so Jesus wasn't just on a trip by itself with his rich uncle. He was returning to the land of his own ancestors in a way, or some of his ancestors anyway. And so this was kind of a coming home moment for him. We're going to go and see where these ships landed. We're going to a place called Mount St. Michael. There are other legends of sites nearby where alternate sites where he may have landed. We're going to visit all of those sites. And then we're going to go see for ourselves these ancient mines. These ancient mines, we're talking 2,000 to 3,000 year old mines, fed the mineral hunger of the Roman Empire almost by themselves. And there was a lot going on here. And remnants of these old mines exist today and are part of the story of where Jesus walked in Britain. And we're going to go to those sites as well.
Really quick, Ben, if you don't know, tin is a critical ingredient to making bronze, and bronze was the material of demand for Rome, building weapons, building infrastructure, anything.
Yeah, so it's not just a fragments of a story that Jesus went there, but we also have motive. We also have why he was going there as a teenager, how he got there with his rich uncle and his fleet of ships, and yes, the metals in these British mines have been found all over the Roman Empire, Pompeii, other areas at the time. And so we know Britain was very connected to the Roman Empire, even at the time that Jesus was alive. According to these legends, he made his way up the coast, up towards the east. There is one place we'll be stopping called the Jesus Well. It's in the middle of a golf course, but we can just walk up to it. It's said to have healing properties by locals, according to the legends that persist all the way down to today. And it's kind of a fun site. And then we'll continue on to what Chris was talking about, the great and legendary Jesus sites of Britain in the Glastonbury area. And no trip is complete if you're going to follow the footsteps of Jesus without Glastonbury. There are communities around Glastonbury that have their own traditions. Pretty is the name of is one of them that we'll visit. The Mendip Hills were around Glastonbury were part of this massive lead and tin mining operation, and so I can't wait to go back there. I've been to these sites. It really is something to walk in the path that the Savior walked, even if allegedly one of my favorite sites, I'll just give my favorite site. It's in Glastonbury. It's the Glastonbury Tor. And we're going to talk a lot about the not only the places where Jesus walked, but also the people who lived there at the time, who these people were, why were they looking forward to the coming of a Messiah? Why did they have what LDS people would identify as a temple site right there in Glastonbury, a full site of sacred ordinances that existed before the coming of Jesus? We're gonna see where he built
Thousands
his
of
own
years,
church.
thousands of years before Jesus, that site
Yeah,
existed.
long before Jesus, temple ordinances existed all over Britain, Ireland, and other places in the world. And it's just a fascinating history. Why these stories haven't survived well in the world of academia is largely because academia is focused. They're focused on telling us, on gathering information a certain way and reviewing it, and peer reviewing it a certain way, and it really doesn't do well accounting for these fragments that don't fit these exact procedures that they follow. And you really have to kind of step back and look at the totality of the evidence and put it all together to see where the patterns are, to start to put the full story together. History is difficult. People back then weren't writing things down thinking of us in the future finding it in a perfectly packaged way. And so but that's what we've done. In our book, we have 256 sources of information for this story. We're happy to share that with everyone so people can do their own research and take off where we have. My Uncle Glenn was very excited about this. There's something very special about this, as we learned from the followers of Jesus. Braun mentioned that this site has a very unusual status in Britain among the British governments and monarchs throughout the thousands of years that it's existed. There's only one explanation for the way this land is governed and maintained, and that is that something very, very special and very sacred happened at this site historically. And if Jesus really did visit this site and live here and build a small church there, and his disciples started the gospel there, that accounts for the sacred nature that the people revere this location all the way down to today. And so there's a legendary story here. We believe that the church that Jesus established on the earth originally flourished here too, and that it was established here as well as other places like in Jerusalem, and that it predated the Catholic Church being in Britain, and it actually flourished for a time, flourished all over Northern and Western Europe until around 600 AD, when the Great Apostasy, tore through the world and destroyed a lot of the original Christianity and fragmented it. So there's really an epic story of the rise and fall of the original Celtic Church established by Jesus' followers that is going to be fun to walk and see as well. That's an entire additional story to this. So
yeah, we're really excited for the tour. Chris has been phenomenal to work with. We're excited to work with her. As part of the tour, we want everyone who signs up to be ahead of the game and know kind of what we're getting into and why these different sites are significant and kind of what they mean. We want you to share the excitement that we feel when we show up to these sites and the emotional response that we get. And of course, to feel the spirit while you're there. And we think that to maximize that opportunity, you knowing at least something of what we know beforehand be helpful. So anyone who signs up for the tour, we will be contacting you via email to give you a free copy of our book, Hidden Stories of Jesus in Britain. Some of you may have already read it. It really does put together a lot of the pieces, and it puts together the research. And so anyone that signs up, we're going to give you a free copy of this book. We want you to come prepared on the tour with questions, with insights, to feel what we felt, at least a part of what we felt in writing it.
That's such a great offer, Braun and Ben, because I know when we've been on these tours before, I have people reaching out to me. What can I read beforehand? What's a
Sure,
good
yeah.
source to read? Because they kind of want to get a little bit of content under their belt. And like I said, usually I'm sourcing out 4 or 5 different books to pull all of this together. And what a great tool to have with you and to have before, so that you can just absorb so much more of the information once you're out there on the tour itself. So that's phenomenal. Thank you. That's
Yeah,
so exciting.
and bring the book with you too when you come. It's an excellent field guide. We have the maps and the explanations. It's kind of like going on a camping trip with your Boy Scout handbook. So
Yeah. So
Not
that's
like that.
great.
Way more fun than that.
Yeah.
yes, you're not required. You're not going to get a merit badge for it though.
So let's go to the first slide here. We start our journey in London, and this is Temple Church. Many of you have been there. If you've been on our tours, we always go to Temple Church. It was built by the Knights Templar, and you might be going, well, why are we talking about Knights Templar if this is a story about Jesus? But they do tie in to the tradition because they are supposedly they carry on the tradition, and they are protectors of the secrets of the family, of the royal family of Jesus and Mary. And so we're going to get into discussing the idea that Jesus was married. He was married to Mary Magdalene. We'll go in and share how all of that is really, once you have all the context, it's very self-explanatory. It's self-evident, so to speak, that has to happen. But they're tied into that tradition. And so we visit one of their main Templar sites that is very bedrock in that Knights Templar tradition. It's an amazing church. I don't know, Ben or Braun, if you've been there.
I've not been there, but we are going to talk when we go to Glastonbury. We're going to talk about the Great Fire in the 1100s in the medieval times that was set to the Library of Glastonbury to intentionally destroy a massive storehouse of ancient manuscripts, and how the Knights Templar historically rescued some of those writings secretly and where they took them to. And so they play a big part in preserving the records that we have to know about all of this.
I'm glad you brought that up, because they tie into the Shroud of Turin. They tie into the like you say, all the artifacts, because they had access to Solomon's temple, the tunnels underground the temple. And for a period of time, they were digging and supposedly got the treasure, which we don't know, is that gold, is that silver, or was that knowledge? What exactly was the treasure? But they were always assigned to protect these sacred relics that were tied to Jesus and his teachings. And so, they play an integral part. So the Temple Church is a fascinating place. There's some amazing Knights Templars that are buried there. William Marshall, who was the one who urged and nudged King John to sign the Magna Carta. And the Magna Carta gives us some of our principles that we find in our own U.S. Constitution. So this common law that was originated over in England, we in the new America, in the new founding of the United States, carried over some of those. The founding fathers brought those principles over and implemented it in our Constitution. So we really have our foundation of freedom and liberty is in England, and it's in the wherever the spirit of liberty is, there is Jesus Christ. And so it all ties into this Jesus and he is liberty. And so this spirit of liberty that you'll see in Temple Church, because they go through the historical that takes you all the way from England to the United States and where we are today. And there's some foundation tying that to the Knights Templar. It's really, really fascinating. And so of course we're there, and then from there, we will have a visit to St. Paul Cathedral, and that's iconic. We'll talk about some of the Hermetic traditions that are tied to that, but I know Braun and Ben, you've got St. Paul's info in your book that you talk about.
Yeah, we're quite confident St. Paul was there. There's 5 years unaccounted for in Paul's life. And if you read the New Testament, I mean, they captured pretty much everything from his conversion to his death. Every detail is there. We've got letters from him writing to all sorts of different people. He gets arrested in Rome. He gets released. 5 years go by, he gets arrested again, right? So it's what happened. And there are ancient texts that place him, and even some of the early church fathers, Cardinal Barones being one of them, placing him at the quote unquote extremity of the West. I don't know about you, but in the old world, Rome was not the extremity of the West. Gaul and Spain, at least. Even one of the historians at one of the famous 1500s councils, one of the later councils, said that he doesn't know anyone from his time down that contends that Paul wasn't in Europe, Britain included. And that's because he had family in Britain. It's in Romans 16:13, talks about Rufus Pudens, his mother, and mine. He's talking about his own family. And Rufus was stationed in Britain the majority of his life. He was a Roman senator and military leader. Anyways, it's a fascinating history.
So we'll be going to we'll be going to that site, and then we have on there that we'll be able to listen to evensong. So the acoustics inside that cathedral are spectacular, and so we'll have a chance to hear that and be inside the cathedral itself. And then as we exit London, we're just there for those quick 2 stops, because most of the experiences that we're going to have are going to be outside of London. There's so much to explore, but on the way out, we have to say we have to drive by Boudica's statue, and that's another story that we're going to hear about, a Celtic tradition.
Yeah,
one of my favorite stories. Go ahead, Ben.
This is the greatest hero in all of British history. That's not a fact. That's just my personal opinion. But the story of heroism of that person is just fantastic.
Yeah,
she's incredible, and she saved Celtic Christianity in its infancy, almost single-handedly. She's incredible.
Yeah. So she's one of those warrior. She's just lost in history. We don't learn about her, and yet she, staved off the Roman army. And it's incredible. So we're going to learn about her. So that's one of the stories that we'll hear.
We kind of attribute this to part of the Great Apostasy. It's something we can talk about, but she wasn't just a Celtic or a British war hero. This is the story of saving the church, the original Christian church that Jesus set up, and its collapse. And we know that the apostasy around the world that took place in the early medieval times destroyed a lot of things intentionally. And so we think her story was lost intentionally. They don't want people to know what really happened in the original Church of Jesus Christ. That's part of the game they were playing. So, but they didn't erase everything. And we have the fact that this statue is displayed where it is. This is right across the street from Big Ben in London. It is a prominent location for it's not just a small contribution to British culture and history. This is a big deal.
Yeah, I'm excited. We're going to be highlighting her on the tour. We head down to Salisbury. We'll be visiting Salisbury Cathedral. That's an iconic structure, but you're looking at an iconic structure right now, which is Stonehenge. And so we do have to have a visit to Stonehenge. There's so much that we can be learning from these ancient sacred sites. They are not willy-nilly. They definitely are on land that is you would consider perhaps a nexus point where they could connect with the heavens. And that's another piece that we'll kind of bring into this tour is the electromagnetic fields that are on the earth and how these ley lines connect sacred sites throughout the world. And so our ancient forebears knew about these energy sites, and they were much more connected to nature. They were much more connected to the elements and to the earth than we are, unfortunately. And they were much more connected to the skies and the heavens. And that's how they can date a lot of these ancient sites, is by knowing what the astronomical alignments were in the sky. So we will be visiting Stonehenge. That's definitely a must when we're down in Salisbury. And then from there, we will go up to Avebury. Now, Avebury is an area that I really enjoy, because Avebury is it's one of the largest stone complexes that there is to visit, and you can get up close and personal with the stones. And the village there is quaint, and it's out in the middle of I think we're up near Wiltshire in that area, but you can get up close and personal with the stones. And we spend a lot of time in that particular area, because you can get a lot more intimate. And we'll be going through and talking about the stones and how they line up, and different things. But these ancient um, stone structures were very, very important in worshiping. And again, we're talking about a a a, a, a religion, or a what's the word I want to use, that dates prior to Jesus Christ. But we have to understand that there's a continuation of truth that's happening through eons of time. And if God is the same yesterday and today and going forward, then we're going to see common threads of truth that's going to show up in different periods and eons of time. And these stone structures really tie into the connecting us to the heavens, and how important it is that we are connected to the heavens and not looking at the earth and what this earth is going to offer us, as much as what we can learn from the heavens. And Avebury is such a place. And from there, we stop real quick for lunch that we'll be treating you to. But this is one of my most favorite taverns or pubs to go to. It's out there in Wiltshire. It's very close to the sites that we'll be visiting. There's Silbury Mound. There's a oh gosh, off the top of my head, I'm just looking for it here. But we're going to some ancient sites in that area, but this pub is right in the middle of all of these sites. And it's a pub that was frequented by Charles Dickens in the 1600s. And it's just very charming, great food. And so we're going to stop by there and have a wonderful lunch on that particular day that we're in Avebury.
Just to
And
point
then-
out something with these ancient circles that we're going to go see. Today temples have certain symbols that, holiness to the Lord, or steeples, or an angel Moroni's on top. The ancients had different but similar symbols that designated something as the house of God. And Avebury and Stonehenge, especially Stonehenge, they have these symbols, and we'll talk about those on the tour. It's something to think about when you see those stone circles. There's more than meets the eye.
Yes, definitely. Okay, and from there, now we're gonna switch and go back to Knights Templar tradition. So this is St. Catherine's Chapel, and this is down in Abbotsbury, which is off the coast. If you can get a clear day off the English Channel there, you can actually look over to France from this particular site. But this is a chapel dedicated to St. Catherine, and you'll learn about her. She's tied into a lot of really interesting history, but she's a martyr. She's an early Christian martyr. And the Templars were had so much respect for individuals who were willing to give their life for truth, and she is one of those. And so they honor and revere St. Catherine. And so there's a lot of sites that are dedicated to her that the Templars were part of their maintenance and keeping track of. And this is one in particular. I have not personally been to St. Catherine's other than this particular shot, because I was on a tour with another researcher, Freddie Silva, and I had injured my knee and I could not walk up that hill. because of this, of my injury. So I'm excited to get into St. Catherine's Chapel and to see that view across the channel there. So it's a really beautiful area, and there's some fun sites, but that takes us into more Templar tradition. And then from there, okay, so here we have, I've not been to St. Michael's, so I had to just grab something offline, but there is St. Michael's Mount. And Ben, you've been there, right?
Yeah, you can see at the bottom of that picture, these people walking up a stone pathway. That actually goes across the bottom of the ocean. At low tide, you could just walk it, but at high tide, you got to take the boat. So we'll see what one we hit it at.
Yeah, how our timing works out. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that is St. Michael is actually the name of one of the ley lines that runs through England. There's actually two that intertwine, St. Michael and St. Mary. And that energetic ley line is right under that mount.
And this is where we believe, I mean, it didn't look exactly like this when Jesus arrived. It was more wooden Roman structures, but this is one of the most assumed arrival points for Jesus landing in Britain. He first touches down right here on this island.
Yeah, I'm excited to be there. Okay, and from there we will be, we're going to be bringing in the King Arthur, the Arthurian legends at this point, because we'll be going to Tintagel Castle. So I have just a stock photo of the castle itself, which is a stone. It's a cave, so to speak. But the photo on the right, again, it's the tour I was on where it's hard to see at this point, but there's a staircase that takes you down to the castle area that you have to climb down. But since this photo was taken, my understanding is that they've created a walkway, a bridge across there. So you don't have to do all the steps, because there was a ton of stairs. Is that right, Bron?
Yeah, the castle's in two pieces on each side of the upper ledges you're looking at in that picture on the left. Each side has a half of the castle, and they've since built a sky bridge right across the top of that. It's a lot easier to access.
Yeah.
Both sides. Yeah.
So I'm excited because that's another side I couldn't get to because I couldn't do all those stairs at the time. So I'm super excited about that one.
Everyone's banned from getting injured on this trip.
Yes, we're not putting out any energy. That's not going to happen. But here we have one of the most iconic sites on the planet, really, is Glastonbury Tor. And that is, it's a little bit of a climb, but it's totally doable. But that is one of the amazing sights to see there. And what's so cool, I've talked about the Michael Mary energetic line, is that there is a labyrinth of those two lines of energetic ley lines that just encircle that whole hill complex. It's almost like it has its own labyrinth underneath it.
Yeah, there's nowhere on Earth that has the magnetic field thing going on more than this one site right here. And this was, I mean, that tower is the remnant of a what was a larger church in history, but that hilltop was a sacred temple site anciently, and there's a lot of evidence for this, including archaeological.
It was a grove of apple trees, grove of fruit trees, where you would go to learn your role in the cosmos, God's plan, what happens in the afterlife. The Druids weren't hiding this. They're pretty open about it, that's what this site was to learn about who God is and what's your role in his plan.
And the tree of life, like we hear about in the Garden of Eden, is common throughout Druidic Britain.
Yeah. Yep. The oak tree.
So the other thing that you'll have from Glastonbury Tor is they have what is considered the Temple of the Skies. So supposedly the astronomical signs of the zodiac are reflected on the ground. Now there's been erosion over time, but supposedly at certain heights, I think it was with Dorn, when we were at Dorn, we had people line up and you could see the one hill that represented a Pisces. And so the landscape actually was reflecting what was in the sky at that period of time, which was around 2,600 years ago, I believe, something like that. So that's also part of that Glastonbury uh, experience, is the idea that it was reflecting the heavens at the same time. There's only about 3 other sites on the planet that has that type of situation where you've got the earth modeling the heavens. And then, of course, Glastonbury Abbey. We have to go there. That's where the church was built for Jesus, or Jesus for Mary, right?
Yeah, this is the exact spot where he built his church of mud and wattles is in the basement of this abbey, and it's also where the library, the great library of the Druids, was. There was a university here at the time Jesus visited. There were over 60 Druidic universities in Munch at the time. When we say universities, they didn't operate on the same way by being just secular knowledge. They were religious centers too. So when you say universities, we're talking about religious knowledge and centers, places of traditions and worship too. And this is the granddaddy of them all.
It's also
Yes.
where the Knights Templar gathered their information a millennia later, and were ousted for it. Basically, they had to scatter and try to preserve what they could. That's why the abbey's in ruins. Well, for several reasons, but yeah, it's known as St. Mary's Church in antiquity. It's because of the tradition that Jesus built his wattle church in fulfillment of the Feast of Tabernacles. You build a wattle church at the birthplace of your parents. He built one here. And it's validated by none other than William the Conqueror. When he surveyed all properties in all of Britain, he named this spot the Domus Dei, which means the house of God. And they said it's a place where that was significant to both Jesus and his mother. There's lots more to talk about that, but
Yeah.
incredible site.
And then, of course, in Glastonbury, there is Chalice Well. And there's a tradition of Joseph of Arimathea bearing the chalice in that particular spot, which the chalice containing the blood of Jesus, and that the red water, or the iron that comes out of the water that's there at the well, is from the blood of that chalice. And it's a healing spring. People come to gather that particular water because of the iron content, and take that with them. That's a souvenir. But that is an amazing place to visit. And that's right next door to the tour. Those are the two. We'll visit both those sites. They're right back to back.
I have my little flask I got of Glastonbury spring water last time I was there, with the little symbol of the well on it. My favorite souvenir.
Okay. And then we're not highlighting every little spot that's on this particular tour, but I am excited that I'm finally getting to Oxford, and this is Magdalene College, and this is named after Mary Magdalene, and she's definitely part of the tradition. And we're going to learn how this college played an important role in keeping that tradition of Mary Magdalene as the teacher and the one to continue the teachings of Jesus. And really to establish Christianity in France and in the Normandy region over into northern Italy in the Tuscan region. And so we'll be going to Oxford, and we are going to include a couple of other sites. We have a city tour, but we're going to be punting on the river, the Cheswell River that's there. And I haven't been punting there, but we have been punting on the Cam in Cambridge. So I've just got a picture of what a punt looks like, because a lot of people might not be familiar with it, but it's just a kind of a long river boat. And we'll be doing punting in the Oxford University area of England when we go there. So I'm excited about that. Do you guys have anything to add for Oxford?
Well, again, there's the story of Jesus. There's the story of his disciples. There's the story of of others involved, but there's also the stories of the records themselves. Like, just how did these records survive for thousands of years is a story in addition. And Oxford is a big part of the story of the records and the tradition keeping of British people over history. So I can't wait to go and see that. We would not have anywhere near the information we have if it wasn't for what's gone on at Oxford all these years.
All right, so that's kind of the conclusion of what we were going to talk about. If you have any questions, I'm going to look and see if any of you had questions that you left us. So the question was, what sites are different from the previous tour? So Glastonbury, Avebury, London, those are the sites we've seen before. What's going to be new is that we used to go further north. We're staying just in the Cornwall and Somerset, Salisbury regions. And so Glastonbury is going to be a repeat, of course, but everything else is pretty new. And that's why most of the pictures we have are the sites we've had before, but we're exploring all new sites that Ben and Braun have brought up, from Jesus Well to the mines where Joseph was doing his mining business. We're going to visit those sites. And so it's really a deep dive in the Joseph of Arimathea tradition.
We'll have Lou Island, which was known anciently as Lamana, or the church or island of home of Anna. It was said to be her home. We'll be going there. We'll be going to Mount St. Michael, the Tin and Lead Mines, Land's End. I don't know, did your previous tour go to Tintagel Castle?
We did not.
So that's all new. That's Arthurian legend stuff. That's incredible. And we'll even take a sneak peek at one of the supposed ancestral tribe of Jesus's mother's family, which is known as the tribe of the Sealers, and they're just north of Glastonbury. We'll see some of their sites too, which I don't know if that happened last time. So
No.
I asked Chris, we kind of went over what Glastonbury sites did you go? Just speaking of Glastonbury itself, I asked her if you went to the Lady of the Lake. That was one that came up. There are going to be several King Arthur sites we visit, as you can see, the Cadbury Hill Fort, which is a likely location of Camelot. The site where the Lady of the Lake threw Excalibur into his hands is right there in Glastonbury, and there's a display there that explains the whole story. You can stand right there and read it and see where that all happened. So we're going to try. We kind of have an idea of what you've seen before. Even in Glastonbury, we're going to add some new stuff.
Oh, the pinnacle of the trip, though, that was not on the previous tour is St. Justin Roslin, which is a traditional landing point. The theory is that Jesus and Joseph went to various ports touring the different mining sites, and Justin Roslin was one of them. Mount St. Michael was one of them. But Justin Roslin is one of the most gorgeous pieces of natural landscape I've ever seen in my life. It is your own little Garden of Eden. How it exists there is a tradition we'll explore, and it's rich with the traditions of Jesus visiting as a young man.
I was wondering if we're aware of where the silver mines were of Joseph of Arimathea. Are they still there? Are you heading that direction? Do you know anything about that?
I've heard about the silver mines. I believe that they are in the Mendip Hills right above Glastonbury.
Mhm.
It's not really clear if they were just pulling out silver or if they were using other minerals to process silver. Yeah, and so but yeah, I have heard that in the richest mining district are the Mendip Hills, and you can see them from Glastonbury tour off in the distance. They're right there.
Are they still in use today?
Some of the mines are still in use today.
No kidding. Really?
We'll be visiting some of the tin mines that are active today for sure, out more west of Glastonbury.
Yeah. Obviously,
Wow.
not all of them. My favorite mine is called the Ding Dong Mine. It's mentioned in our book quite a bit. I don't know why they call it that, but that mine's been sealed off, but it was in operation for over a millennia.
And if I could just ask another question, I think I'm aware from other classes that Mary, the mother, the wife of Christ, his bride, she was from England. Am I right? And he brought her back. Is that what you teach?
Me and Chris might have different theories on this, but Chris, you can answer first.
Yeah, well, Sandra, you were in a class that we had with Dr. Hall, and Dr. Hall was a scholar and had access to first century documents, and what he was teaching was the idea that Mary Magdalene does come from the Celtic area, and that this gets into the Jewish apostasy, that her forefather, grandfather, great grandfather, something of that nature, was a high priest in Solomon's temple. And when the Jewish apostasy happened, the Rechabites, he would have been a Rechabite, they left because they didn't want to join the new Jewish religion. And you had the Essenes that broke off and went down south, and the Rechabites went over to the Great Britain area. And the idea is that the Rechabites married into the Celtic line of kings, and that formed and created the Druidic line, supposedly, and that Mary Magdalene comes through a line of the Celtic royalty and this high priest that would have had the Israelite blood line in her.
Right.
Because what I love about searching for Jesus and trying to do this and figure these puzzle pieces out, is you have to rely on the Spirit. You really have to rely on getting insight from the Holy Spirit, from the Spirit of truth, right?
Smith really laid it out in the later Doctrine and Covenants, where he's talking about the Apocrypha, that there's a lot of truth in there, and that there will be people that can benefit greatly from that knowledge when they use the Spirit in their study.
Thank
Well,
you.
people are asking, what do we need to do to sign up? And so I wanted to let you know that we are taking deposits now. And as you heard before, that once you get your deposit in, which is $300, that holds your seat, reserves your seat. Plus, you'll be able to get a copy of the book and start doing your research and your reading with this amazing book that both Ben and Braun have written. And so the tour itself is September 6th through the 19th. We fly out of Utah on the 6th and return on the 19th. And $300 deposit goes towards the tour cost of $5,200. That's double occupancy, and that includes your hotel, the guides, the hotels, the transportation, access to the sites. Some of the breakfasts are included. There'll be a couple of lunches, a couple of dinners. And so it's really an amazing experience. And it's the type of, I hear from people that have traveled, they feel like they've been and experienced the heart and soul of England. And they can have traveled there numerous times, but unless you have gone on a tour like this, where you just get into these ancient traditions that are just steeped. I mean, we're talking Druidic traditions that are going back, thousands and thousands of years. And this is that land. And it's just a really life-changing experience. And I think that's why we have so many people that like to come back on this tour, because it feels so good to be on it and learning and trying to get as close as we can to our Savior.